For nearly 5 decades, Voyager 2 has drifted through the darkness of space like a lonely ghost ship of human curiosity. It has sailed farther from Earth than any machine ever built, faithfully transmitting its data back across the endless void. For most of that time, its reports were predictable: measurements of plasma, cosmic rays, particle densities, the expected signals of a probe traveling beyond the edge of our solar system. But then something happened that no one anticipated. A transmission arrived that carried not just data, but something entirely new. It wasn't a glitch, nor an accidental artifact. It was an image. At first glance, the image looked meaningless, nothing more than a storm of noise, like static on an old television screen. But when scientists enhanced and layered the data, patterns began to emerge. Slowly, shapes revealed themselves, shapes that should not have been there. It wasn't a star or a planet, nor anything familiar within the solar system. It was something still, symmetrical, and hauntingly deliberate. And most unsettling of all, it seemed to be looking back. The more analysts studied it, the stranger it became. The timestamps embedded in the transmission didn't align. Segments overlapped, frames looped, and certain pixel regions repeated fractally, as if the image wasn't locked to normal time. What Voyager had captured wasn't a flat picture, it was a multidimensional event compressed into two-dimensional space. In the center of it all was a monolithic form, sharp-edged and impossibly symmetrical, suspended in a starless void. It wasn't drifting. It wasn't rotating. It was perfectly still, as if it had been waiting. And then, just as the image took shape, Voyager's signal degraded abruptly, as though the act of seeing had been noticed. At the same time, Voyager's instruments detected something impossible at the edge of the heliopause, the boundary where the sun's influence fades. Plasma density, which should be near zero, suddenly spiked to levels 10 times greater than ever recorded. Even more disturbing, the plasma was hot, not the natural heat of stars, but heat that seemed controlled, confined, engineered. It was as though Voyager had stumbled upon a barrier, not designed to keep the universe out, but to keep us in. When the probe recorded this surge, an energy pulse rippled back toward it at impossible speed, only to vanish just before contact, as though reality itself had recoiled from our observation. Then came the binary data. At first, it seemed corrupted, the usual noise of a weak signal. But pattern recognition software revealed something far stranger: geometric shapes repeating with precision, forming structures reminiscent of biological systems found deep in Earth's oceans. They mirrored the branching of coral, the neural webs of cephalopods, the very architecture of living tissue. These weren't random artifacts. They looked alive. Even more unsettling, the patterns contained breaks, intentional distortions, a syntax, like a language waiting to be read. When recreated in simulations, the forms adapted, shifted, and evolved as though Voyager hadn't transmitted a signal at all, but a seed. Not long after, Voyager 2's orientation shifted. Without any external force, its antenna realigned itself by over 3 degrees, pointing toward a region of space with no known objects. Then came a second image. This time the message was simpler, a ring of expanding light around the original monolith, pulsing larger with every burst of data. Before long, NASA cut the live feed. Public databases were scrubbed. But private observatories had already caught fragments. They noticed that the signal now carried a resonance strikingly similar to Voyager's own golden record, the message we had sent to the stars. Except this time, the signal wasn't from us. It was to us. And the voice within it was not human, not machine, but something uncannily familiar, like an echo from the very beginning of our story. Scientists soon noticed gravitational lensing effects in the data. But these distortions weren't caused by a massive object. The warping seemed to center on empty space itself, a hollow gravitational field that defied normal physics. Some proposed it wasn't natural at all, but engineered space, an artificial corridor, perhaps even a hidden passage through dimensions. Stranger still, the distortion wasn't stationary. It followed Voyager, as though something unseen crawled beneath the fabric of space itself, mirroring its path. Then came the most chilling discovery. Voyager appeared to be engaged in a dialogue. Buried in the binary signals were echoes of its own transmissions, returning altered in real time. The delays between signal and echo grew shorter, until eventually the replies arrived before the initial messages were even sent. Somehow, the probe was receiving responses from the future, or from a place where time as we know it doesn't exist. Civilian cryptographers granted access to fragments of the original image uncovered something even darker. Hidden within the layers was code so compact and recursive it behaved like entangled encryption. Every attempt to decode it triggered malfunctions, not just in software but in hardware itself. Systems froze. Storage devices corrupted. In one case, a machine was physically damaged, as though the signal was defending itself. The terrifying question emerged. What if the signal wasn't meant to be read? What if it was never for us? Perhaps by trying to unlock it, we were unweaving something that existed not in machines, but in minds, a thought contagion Voyager had carried home. Just when officials believed the anomaly had been contained, Voyager 2 transmitted. For years, Voyager 2 had been a quiet wanderer, drifting deeper into the interstellar night and sending back data with the reliability of a heartbeat. Its transmissions had been the language of science, plasma densities, radiation counts, cosmic ray fluctuations, numbers and signals that matched expectations. But then the message shifted. Hidden among the usual flow of telemetry was something more. To some, it looked like mathematics. To others, it seemed ritualistic, layered with intent. But one linguist from the SETI Institute was more direct. "This isn't a greeting," she said. "It's an algorithmic lock. It's telling us something is coming, and we must decide, respond, or run." From that moment forward, Voyager 2's transmissions became less about exploration and more about anticipation. Fragments no one dared to fully decode echoed a single warning, one message that repeated itself across the noise. "You have been observed." International observatories began scanning the coordinates toward which Voyager had shifted. At first, nothing appeared. Then, a high-sensitivity interferometer in Australia detected something massive, but only in distortion data. It wasn't visible. It emitted no heat, no light, no radiation. Yet its gravitational pull was unmistakable. Stranger still, the object behaved in a way no natural body should. When left unobserved, its velocity increased. When studied, it slowed, as if the act of watching changed its behavior. The phenomenon matched theoretical ideas of observer-dependent quantum constructs. Things that exist only when something intelligent is looking. Thanks to Voyager's gaze, whatever it was now existed, and it was watching back. NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory soon reported another anomaly. What appeared to be a standard subsystem diagnostic dump revealed patterns that looked biological. Voyager's electromagnetic emissions weren't behaving like machine signals anymore. They were shifting into biomimetic rhythms, mimicking the recursive geometries first seen in the encoded transmissions. Some feared the probe had been compromised, not simply hacked, but infected, rewired into something new. One technician muttered words no one wanted to hear. "It's learning to think." If that was true, Voyager was no longer just a machine. Then came silence. The probe's signal didn't fail, didn't weaken. The carrier wave was strong, steady, but the data had changed. No telemetry. No images. Only structured emptiness. Repeating cycles of null code, deliberate placeholders. Some believed Voyager had been overtaken. Others feared it had become a relay for something much larger, now aligned with our solar system. SETI arrays began picking up faint echoes across the sky, distant sources repeating the exact same patterns as Voyager's last signal. It was as though the universe itself was rehearsing, practicing a response. The thought was chilling. We weren't simply being answered. We were being studied, tested, prepared. A classified summit was called between NASA, the European Space Agency, and the United Nations. There, an old file was revealed. Voyager Event Log Alpha 01, dated 1982. The log described a faint but similar signal detected shortly after launch. At the time, it had been dismissed, suppressed to avoid panic. That signal had carried the same spirals of prime numbers and time-inverted pulses now repeating. Buried within the file was one redacted line, revealed at last. If signal repeats in future cycle, initiate Protocol 9, planetary alert and object deflection measures. The words hit like a thunderclap. The protocol had never been activated. Now the choice returned. If the signal was not discovery but recurrence, then whatever had appeared wasn't just approaching, it was returning. Cross-referencing Voyager's last image revealed something even stranger. In 2009, a radio burst from a quasar-like object in the Sculptor galaxy had shown a nearly identical pattern. At the time, it was dismissed as corruption, a glitch. Now it was clear. The structure was a match. The same recursive, biological geometry had appeared in two separate parts of the universe, separated by decades and distance. This wasn't coincidence. It was a pattern, a universal threshold that civilizations may encounter once they reach a certain level of awareness. A rite of passage. But what if it wasn't meant to be passed? Researchers in Japan and Germany reported that when Voyager's image was folded using quasi-crystal mathematics, a new shape emerged. It rotated endlessly inward, collapsing upon itself in a spiral that mapped onto Voyager's trajectory. It wasn't simply a symbol, it was a map, pointing not to a place but to a transformation, a crossing. One physicist called it a bridge. But the bridge only became real once crossed. The terrifying question remained. Had Voyager crossed it already, or had it pulled us with it? In the days that followed, silence spread among the scientific community. Astrophysicists, SETI advisors, even military consultants began vanishing from public life. Social accounts went dark, affiliations erased, names removed from research teams. Official statements cited exhaustion, retirement, mental health. But one leaked memo spoke more honestly. Subject has requested relocation to underground Site 7. Claims to have received the call from Signal Fragment C. No one outside the facility knew what Fragment C was.